Welcome to the From Lab to Patient, Garage to Market podcast with your host, Phil Crowley. In each episode, we will discuss professionals serving the tech startup market and the various issues of importance to those companies. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, CrowleyLawLLC.com. Now here's the host of From Lab to Patient, Garage to Market, Phil Crowley.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in today. I'm delighted to have with me another of the innovators in the technology space, Tor Alden, who has been Global VP for Design and Development for the Steripak Group and has a distinguished career going back more than 30 years dealing with industrial design and human factors engineering for technology and medical products. Tor got his start with an industrial design degree at Syracuse University and then went to my alma mater, Stevens Institute of Technology, for a master's degree in the management of technology. Tor, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Phil, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Tor, one of the questions that innovators, particularly those who are new to the startup game or considering startups, are, what's it like? What sort of background should you have and how do you get started? Could you give us a little bit of your background and the work that you have done over the years?
Sure. So yeah, thanks for asking, Phil. So, my story is probably not unlike many industrial designers of my age, and that is that it was an upcoming field. And so I'm a product of a black sheep of a mechanical engineering family. My father, as I might have told you, won the Johnson Medal for Johnson & Johnson for developing a whole inline machine for creating high-speed Band-Aid manufacturing and Q-tip manufacturing. Before software, it was all hydraulic. It was, all mechanical based. And, and my brother's a mechanical engineer. So my route was looking more on the art side. So I was driven towards architecture. And I think this is going to be a resounding kind of theme of today, and that's luck. I was lucky enough to be put into a dorm with a roommate that was an industrial designer. And I watched all the projects that he was doing versus what I was doing. I was like, I got to get into this. So it basically me realized what industrial design was my first year in college. So made that shift, the pivot to go to design. And, then again, I was sort of lucky enough to get my first job at AT&T Bell Laboratories. And back in the day, it was really, a heyday of technology innovation. So I was lucky enough to, work on the first fiber to home project, first medical projects, first video conferencing projects. Probably had one of the first emails anybody ever had, right? So it was a first of kind experience for everything technology wise. And I was lucky enough for them to support me to go to Stevens to learn more about technology management. Through all that, though, I realized that Bell Laboratories was really a tech push outfit, right? So it was really it didn't really look about user needs. It really focused on the just technology push. So from there, I was lucky enough again to find a career in a user product development firm in Minnesota, where I really learned the foundations of user research and understanding how to quantify research in a quality process.
And you've taken that to a local company in which you rose to become the CEO and eventually sold it to the global corporation Steripak. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, so when I came to HS Design, it was really, again, at that sort of forefront of the technology shift from paper to digital. And so it was probably the early 2000s when a lot of the innovations came to sort of redevelop product development firms. So there was a big fallout of firms that just couldn't really make that evolution to go to the next stage of the digital evolution. We took that company forward. We made the very strategic decision not to be a jack of all trade product development firm, but to specialize in medical and healthcare, consumer life sciences. And from that point of view, we really adopted, probably on the forefront of 1345 and some of the other guiding regulatory processes that are out there, to really become kind of a core product development company for both the leading medical design firms as well as innovative startups.
And Tor, what are some of the unique sorts of issues that you have to deal with when you're dealing with design of medical devices as opposed to just some other kind of technology products?
Yeah, so complex problems, obviously, or first of kind complex, however you want to define them, are disruptive, right? So that they definitely have a means of pushing out the standard process of what a nurse does or what a doctor does in their profession. So it's very challenging to introduce a product that doesn't really meet a value add to those professions. So the key thing is to really focus on understanding what makes that product easier for the person. And so when you're dealing with a disruptive product, a lot of the inventors or the people that I've worked with as they're developing their company or their product, they get a little bit of a tunnel vision, because to be a startup, you have to have that tenacity to really, bite down and just go towards that goal line. But if you're not careful, you sort of get that myopic view, and you're not able to really understand that it may need to be pivoted somewhere, or it needs to have some more added value or combination of another product. So what we've done, or what I've really focused on, is working with clients to make sure that they're fully aware that the product direction that they're in is there to simplify a real problem and to create that value proposition. And again, most problems, as narrow as they are,
mm-hmm.
typically all have multiple solutions. So it's easy to get down one channel and focus in on that. And if you budget concerns and timeline concerns will really sort of narrow you to try not to make changes. But it's really healthy to step back and have somebody that can actually help you kind of look at the wider picture to make sure that you're going in the right direction.
So if I understand that correctly, what you can help companies do is take some technology that may be great for the inventor and for the inventor's coterie of engineers, and try to get them to see how ordinary people for whom they're trying to make the invention would actually use it, and how to make it easy for them to use. Is that basically it?
Yeah, and I think there's an added component, and we call it like benchtop to bedside. But that's the idea that you're in a lot of these complex problems, they're scaling a project in a prototype that eventually will need to be scaled down or put into different systems, converted into the hospital LIS and other types of issues where you need to just basically understand that the core, it's all about sort of defining your problem in phases and identifying what's success in each phase. And actually, even more importantly, understanding when you have to really go back and understand that it's not going to be a successful project. The adage of 1 in 20 startups make it. It's probably a lot higher percentage than that. That don't make it.
Right.
But so I think there is that understanding that every entrepreneur needs to really take hold of, and that is to really understand if they need to pivot or when they need to reimagine how the next phase might go.
And how does your expertise and the expertise that you developed at your team at HS Design and at Steripak help companies kind of come to that conclusion? It seems like it can be a difficult decision to make, whether to say, well, we have to keep on this particular line because we need to be focused and we need to be persistent, as opposed to, well, we're hitting a brick wall here. We need to do something else. How do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think it really depends on the client that you're working for. Again, I've been very lucky in my career. That theme is going to resonate again. I've always been lucky enough to be working with smart people. And if I'm not the smartest, if I'm the smartest one in the room, I try to get out of there really quick, because it's just not going to happen. Nothing's good's going to happen. So, when you work with a company, a large Fortune 100 company, they're going to have stage gates before and develop the risk mitigation and IP strategy well before they come to us, and they basically got through their own internal stage gates. Startups or innovative, product development companies, or even sort of mid-tier companies, they are more at risk of not really fulfilling sort of the front-end risk obligations that are required in product development. Understanding your freedom to operation in IP, understanding the regulatory surroundings of that company, of the product, and understanding really the barriers of entry. Because as I mentioned before, disruptive by nature means you're going to make a lot of the established companies upset. So they're not going to embrace your technology. They're going to try and fight it. And so, there's going to be that process of understanding how to develop it, get the right leader support, get the right board in place is highly critical. And again, I think the biggest challenge for me, or the biggest success factor I see of startups, is a CEO that understands they need help from a collaborative group, that they're willing to delegate responsibilities. They're willing to take advice from board or from a design firm. A lot of times you'll see, people spending a lot of money on a design firm and just thinking that they're going to get the process that they're asking for, as opposed to all the experience and all the expertise that they could offer. So keeping your ears open and opportunities available always makes a product go better, or at least to success. Yeah.
It sounds like one of the factors in my free ebook, the top 10 causes of failure for technology startups and how to avoid them, is something that you focused on, and that is having a multi-talented team and being able to be a team player, so that the CEO doesn't have to make all of the decisions and can rely on the expertise and various other skill set that the team has. I'd like to take just a moment here to acquaint our listeners with our law firm, Crowley Law. We're a boutique law firm that's focused on helping life sciences and other technology entrepreneurs realize their dreams, to take great ideas from the laboratory bench to the patient's bedside, or from the garage to the marketplace, in order to serve the needs and enrich the lives of thousands or even millions of people. As a former physicist, I appreciate very greatly all of the hard work that goes into discovering new ideas, inventing, and then taking those great ideas to the marketplace. And I and my team are really focused on protecting the interests of the founders and the inventors as they make that journey. If you are on such a journey or have an idea that you would like to commercialize, please contact us at our website, crowleylawllc.com, or send us an email at info@crowleylawllc.com. We're here to help. Well, Tor, getting back to our discussion, you've mentioned a couple of success factors for startup companies and technology companies. What do you think are some of the factors that can lead to problems or issues that get in the way of successful technology development?
Sure. I mean, that's a that could go for another 2 hours, but I think developing the as a technology-driven product, or even any medical product, you've got the user and you've got the technical requirements, and it's sort of a chicken and egg problem, right?
Mhm.
So you create your product requirement document, and then your user requirement document, and you have to somehow blend them together to make sure that you create a definitive product requirement. And if you can't get to that very succinct list of features that map in well with the user needs, it becomes instant scope creep. So it's really imperative to have the right, you mentioned earlier, the right team and the right trust.
Mhm.
So it's a collaborative environment where you have subject matter experts in mechanical engineering, software, the key stakeholders is important. Electrical engineering, all of these people are playing in together with the doctors, because it's medical, nurses,
Mhm.
typically a lot of PhDs involved. And you've also got this huge challenge of meeting the regulatory requirements of the FDA. So what you need to do is really satisfy the FDA with the user requirements, but ensure that the product meets the environmental needs that it's going into. And all those things will increase the chances of market success. But again, getting back to that earlier point, it is that ability to have a good team in place they're all sort of on that same mission. And a lot of companies we see, they come in a little premature, or they want too much, and their budget can't support that. So all of a sudden it gets to a little bit watered down. It's very clear, for working with the right design firm or manufacturer, to really develop an understanding of I call it the Jacob's ladder approach, but it's basically having enough funds to get to the final phase. And if you need to go back to your VCs to get additional funds, you're not sliding backwards, and you're not losing all the work that you've made to get to that point. So get to a prototype stage where you can document and move on. If you need to get more funding, go to the next stage, but try not to get into a problem with financial or team structure during a project or during a phase. That's obviously pretty painful. And I think one of the things that what I'm doing now is advising a lot of clients and companies on really how to steer their product to manufacturing. So it's really that design to manufacturing aspect it's becoming more and more important. There's what we call the valley of death, and that's another whole podcast in itself. But it's once you get a product out to a prototype phase, and you sort of deem the product manufacturable, and you're going to hand it over to a manufacturer, there's this whole pilot build and clinical trial potential testing that you need to do with like manufacturing processes that most manufacturers do not want, because it's not necessarily fitting in their wheelhouse. It's not geared towards their high volume approach. So it's this area that really needs a lot of consideration. And that's what Steripak is very good at right now, is taking that design to manufacture. And that's really kind of the reason we're embracing the acquisition between HS Design to Steripak was that basic premises that design to manufacturing is that missing gap.
Well, that's a very interesting analysis, Tor. Tor, it sounds that even though you're dealing with high technology businesses and many PhDs and skilled engineers, that there are a lot of human factors in the team that need to be managed. You had the opportunity, excuse me, to actually study the management of technology at Stevens. And it would be interesting to get your sense of how you managed some of the human factors and team dynamics as you became a successful CEO at HS Design and Steripak.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I think it coupled well with the industrial design background, and my technical experience with Bell Labs, but it's entrepreneurship and ultimately it's understanding a certain amount of finance, certain amount of marketing, a certain amount of human dynamics, to your point, and the collaborative nature of people, and when people are feeling pressure or fear versus freedom to explore and being secure in their job, there's a healthy mix of creating that culture, which I think a lot of people don't talk about as much anymore. But now with virtual work and a sort of the breakup of a sort of a individual team to be multi-locational and things, you really need to spend and develop that time to create that culture where the people can trust each other. If you don't trust the people you're working with, or if you don't trust your superiors or even your employees, there's going to be a problem there. And so that, I think Stephen's really taught that really well, in that that the design thinking or creative thinking is part of the overall dynamic of being secure in your position, right? If you're worried about if you're fearful about where you are in your position, you're not going to express your concerns. If you see something with a project going on, you may not be the first one to identify it, because you're going to be feared that it's going to be your problem to solve. And I think that's the other thing that I worked very hard in my career, is that made sure that every problem went uphill. There are better ways to express it, but problems flow uphill, right? And you don't want to blame anybody that might have found the problem.
I see. So there's a lot of human factors inside, but it sounds like you were able to establish a culture that allowed people to communicate freely, to have a sense that there was an ethic at HS Design that focused on truthfulness, on analysis, and on debating the issues rather than pointing the finger of blame at somebody. And I must say that the importance of culture is something that certainly resonates with me. I spent, as you know, 30 plus years in the Johnson & Johnson Law Department, and I always felt that the Johnson & Johnson credo was a unifying force in giving people a sense of direction, so that if you didn't have an express policy and procedure to follow, at least you knew in what direction you were going and the values that you were seeking. And you've done so many things over the years, Tor. I wonder if you could think back and share with the audience the development that you're most proud of.
Oof, that's a good one. I think it's probably in my early days at HS, where we were still sort of a struggling, find our way in the medical sector. And it was working with, eventually it was a J&J acquired company, Immunicon, but it was working with sort of I'll call it a highly funded first of kind generation for identifying circular tumor cells. And so it was highly, technologically focused, and it needed to be humanized. And so we came in with really that sort of broad brush of understanding, going out, doing the contextual inquiry with the actual doctors, nurses, and oncologists to find out how they're currently using the technology, and then really trying to adapt trying to use the findings and trying to adapt the technology to be in that process within the existing laboratories. Again, that same problem came through we were working on a project for Omnex, which was a state-of-the-art digital microscope to basically identify slides for cancer. And again, it's the adoption of taking that technology and bringing it into the pathologists in that lab without making it a disruptive environment for them, but actually to make it more approachable. So it's really solving that. Those are the things that give me the greatest joy, is really being able to take that technology and fit it in with an actual environmental case that could be adopted seamlessly, but yet almost invisible, right? And identifying the stakeholders along the way. Because again,
oh, go ahead, please.
Well, so I mean, the biggest challenge I think another, I say not the biggest, but one of the overlooked challenges I think a lot of startups have is identifying the payer for the technology. And so one of the things that we've done, and I've done, is kind of done a research assessment of where what are the codes necessary to provide that test? Where should that product live within the in the ecosystem of a hospital or a doctor's office or wherever, or even if it's at-home testing, but or over the counter? Understand where that pay point is and understand who the stakeholders are throughout that process, and ultimately find out how you can generate a report that will generate the income for that product. A lot of times it's just technology for technology's sake, and then they find out that no one's willing to pay for it.
Right. It sounds like one of the success factors that you've identified is doing a lot of market research, a lot of talking to potential users of the product to make sure that you've identified a real problem, a real pain point, as you mentioned.
Pain point is exactly
that you can solve, and then identifying, particularly in the medical device area, who's going to pay for it and whether or not there's an existing mechanism for actually doing that. And that, of course, is part of really good market research. And I'll point out to our viewers, if they're not aware of it, that the National Science Foundation has a program called the I-Core program, and grants are available to startup companies based on applications to the National Science Foundation to receive a grant to actually go out and talk to 100 potential users or purchasers of your grand idea to make sure that you have a solid sense of what the market actually needs and can then translate that into your research and development plan for to increase the success of the plan.
Yeah, I would add to that, Phil. I actually was part of that I-Core for one of the startups I was involved in, and it was very eye-opening when, I mean, we've practiced design throughout my whole career on telling people what to do on how to get their feedback. But when you actually have to make those calls to those clients and those 100 calls, and they mandatory, 100 people to call, and you actually start building that roadmap very quickly, and you understand the pain points or the non-pain points of that product. So it's the lean startup methodology, I think, is a great way to understand it. It's really just based on learn, build the model, measure it, and then come back and learn again, and analyze your product, and then create more ideas, and then measure it.
Well, I think that you've shown, Tor, that success in technology development is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. If you had to do it all over again, what things would you have changed?
Wow. I don't know if there's an ability to really change where I came from, because again, it was a lot of just being at the right place at the right time, and kind of having opportunities that to develop my profession. I really couldn't say what would happen. I really think every kind of thing fell in place kind of very logically. I mean, could it have happened faster without more painful moments in place? Sure. If I had all my hindsight, I could have expedited it a little bit. But I think the journey was fun, and I often tell people I was very fortunate in that I never felt like I worked a day in my life when I was, in the heat of product development, because something I love, and I know a lot of people haven't had that opportunity. So I feel very fortunate about that.
Well, and you've worked very hard at it, and it reminds me of a quote attributed to Thomas Jefferson, which was, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So I think what you may attribute just to luck is part of the product of your hard work in doing it. Well, the time has flown by, Tor, and I want to thank you again for participating today. I think you've got some great insights on what it takes, excuse me, to be successful in this area of technology development. And I'd like to invite our viewers to visit our website, crowleylawllc.com, where we have many free resources that deal with issues that technology innovators should know about. And if you do have any questions, please reach out and contact us at info@crowleylawllc.com. And thanks again for tuning in.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
You've been tuning into the From Lab to Patient, Garage to Market podcast with your host, Phil Crowley. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, crowleylawllc.com. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe, like, leave a positive review, and share with others.